Alrighty, daily trading recap for this Thursday, the 21st of April, 2022. To Christ be the glory. Going to try to keep it as quick and short and brief as possible for the little sickness and sore throatiness that I do have today. Some more sickness in the morning, especially to sleeping in a little bit closer to market open and then taking a hard, longer nap after the morning session there, just trying to get over this little physical illness that I had as of right now, but continuing to just get after it day by day. Taking each step in stride. NASDAQ, just dollar volume for reference as of 55 minutes after the close here. NASDAQ $279 billion volume. NYSE $364 billion volume. OTC's $2.1 billion volume there. Took a lot of trades today, especially on the equity side, and this was one of the higher loss days on the P&L side for my cash account through these longs. But it wasn't anything over 4% loss, but it's just of trying to get it out again on SEV, and just I really don't feel I have a problem with cutting losses quickly. It's just about identifying when and where to get in these trades and what is actually a winner. And as I'll get in some other ones, some of those theses were correct, but just missed being a part of them, and some just cut a little bit too early because of the choppiness that is trading and marketing, not marketing, but being in the market. So we'll get over each and every single one of those in a little bit here. I just want to say I'm kind of glad that I wasn't up earlier or feeling as well enough to be able to start playing more of these morning dump setups, because the two that I feel were there, the CYN and GFAI, both were fake outs for those indicators that I was looking for to be getting short at price's failure to maintain VWAP after that initial news spike. Both of those rejected immediately, reclaimed, not immediately, but eventually reclaimed back above VWAP before offering any amount of near a 10% profit target area. Both reclaimed above VWAP and actually pushed a new high of days there, which would have stopped me out either at that reclaimed VWAP or definitely at that new high of day push there. So glad I really wasn't a part of both of those, but just interesting to see how this specific morning dump setup strategy, it's not always like any strategy ever is. Nothing is ever 100%. And for what I feel, this is this hot time in the market to be playing this strategy. This is where I initially found the strategy last year and started kind of documenting it and looking at it more and more and actually trading it. Stepping into this year, after now seeing it a few more times pop up here again and again, I haven't really taken any hard stabs at it, putting real money on the line. But then again, I don't feel it has been coming around as hard as it did back then either. So just continuing to keep that fresh mentally and always being prepared and open to whatever the market says and not being so tied down to my own disillusions or biasments that way. But let's get into the tickers there. With GFAI, I'll start off with, try to play a little dip and ripper attempt here on this one. Could consider this a little bit early. I want to see it, you normally want to see it maybe just a little bit later, let it draw in a little bit, few more shorts, get him feeling more confident in trying to play this thing for more downside. Fundamentals, Thailand Cash Services Company, 9 million flow. They had a few consecutive red days in a row, which isn't crazy or isn't detrimental, but I do love to see the overwhelming downtrending chart. It does have a history of a little bit of one and dones here on that perspective of, that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's what I'm playing for. I'm not making this a swing trade, but when volume comes in, it increases volatility. So, hey, that's a good sign to see potentially there. Reported short interest of 64% of the float. Whether or not that's correct or whether or not that has any weight, just keeping that in the back of my mind, though. The newscast today was they're rolling out some robot services, cool robot things in the U.S. here, so whatever that means. They do have some warrants exercisable at $1.15 and also $5 million left of a shelf from like 2018, I believe, a long time ago. But we got a nice dunkage out of the open coming in under VWAP there, producing some nice little price action that certainly fits the mold for what a dip and rip pattern tries to be. Didn't try to be a hero. I was watching other tickers at the time as well, wasn't trying to be a hero and pick the exact bottom to catch a falling knife as it's still dropping down and continuing to let it just draw out as much as it possibly could before that final move was there, that my entry would be on the way up as this thing is starting its reclaim to VWAP to potentially then further catapult itself above VWAP for any type of price action. Close to 92, 94, not expecting it or not trying to push it above to a new high of day to 98 area, but potentially if the price action and level 2 time sales were indicating that something like that could happen, then leaving a few lottery shares on around that time frame, around that price range to be looking for that type of trade there. But just did not happen. So I entirely followed my entry plan of, okay, hey, we're putting in a higher low here at this 937 candle. This was kind of one of the higher volume candles for this bottom of that red candle here, which should kind of be a good indicator as well. Okay, now I'm seeing level 2 time sales or bid even step up a little bit as we're starting to press this little high, if you want to consider that, this regional high of 8.4-ish range. Okay, I'm starting to step up. Let's go ahead and size it with my entry there. Gosh, yeah, 400 shares. I know for the conviction that I should have on some of these trades, and I really don't like to use that shoulda, coulda, woulda type of mindset, but these are these trades that, especially that Chris has capitalized on, that have proven, hey, none of them are going to work out. No strategy, like I mentioned in the introduction, is going to work out 100% of the time, but for a convicted, probable strategy like this of playing a dip and rip that has been repeatable, that I have been a part of and seen since nearly the start of my trading career and been around this type of pattern, hey, this is putting in some pretty good indicators and parameters for me to identify this could be a potential there, but just was not. It was a little bit of a fake out. It just was not in the cards for that specific time frame, for that specific point in time, for today, for this price action. So, of course, as I read in another Market Wizards in the latest Jack Schwager book, of the guy was talking about of how he really hates it and he was more of a swing trader time frame, so he hates it how guys will just let stocks go and just continue to fade down to their stop when they knew days in advance that price action was looking very weak and it wasn't going to be very probable, and they just didn't cut the trade right away. I can kind of look at this chart specifically as well too and see, okay, gosh, within this specific candle, 942-minute candle here, of how price has already peeled off of that high it created. It's now back down in this little range that I was looking at as the base consolidation. Okay, that's not a good sign. I wanted to see price immediately moving away from my entry rapidly. I wanted to see the reclaim to VWAP. I wanted to see the push above there to a new market hours high of day to start busting through these technical levels and lines. And it's just not happening. So not jumping on that quick enough. I can hound myself on for maybe saving myself 1%, 2% on my total loss. Of that was close to a 4% loss that I ended up incurring, still risking that low of day, and of course taking slippage on my order there after setting that stop. But again, these ones are just so tough of trying to set because of how fast these things are moving. It's not a swing trading perspective that you can say that there's just so much wiggle room. Like in that example of I was mentioning that Market Wizard guy, I was saying, the stock's going to die, so why don't you just cut it? Why are you letting it wait to run all the way into your stop? I feel like there's a little bit of blurred lines or gray area with these specific types of trades because of how manipulative these can be. For if this one especially, how many times they can just be little fake outs that end up just collecting the stops right below that low of day and then reversing and tracing right back in that little range once again, and then eventually having another little move later. So, but this one was dead, and I cut losses quickly, stuck to my parameters that I set, stuck to my entry mindset that I wanted to be on this one, in being with the momentum of the trade as it was potentially going to happen. The only thing I think would have been a better indicator for me, other than just what this candle looked like, was to see actual volume on the volume chart here, representing, okay, a reversal of price action here at this point, which didn't really happen around this time frame of 937-ish to 942, just compared to the first few minutes of market open and compared to the minutes following that as it was breaking low of day. More volume was in those ranges than was in these ranges here, which is, that consolidation, we don't want to see a crazy amount of volume coming in that it's just failing to move anywhere. But in that low consolidation, when that move eventually happens, that's when you want to see the big volume perks start to come in, and that just really wasn't a key metric found in this one today, so I can knock myself in that regard for that dip and rip not happening today, and not kind of recognizing that and factoring that in intra-trade as it was starting to retrace back to that little consolidation mark before it broke my stop-loss risk there at low of day. But still keeping size small, fortunately. But, gosh, yeah, it is what it is. SEV, I'll get into now. Man, heavily convicted on this trade for the day. Floaty on this bad boy, 10.4 million float I'm showing on scans here. Very nice first screen day. I wanted to throw in also, I mentioned yesterday that I was playing around with the anchored VWAP setup based on how Tim Grattani said that in one of the recent Huddy and Dom podcasts, and how he was kind of playing around with it or using it as a potential indicator just to see as a better barometer or gauge for one specific price level that could be the determiner of where is the average short and where is the average long. So I even set it up especially to just base it on the biggest volume candle here on that first green day that it had on Tuesday there. Starting it at here, of course, it kind of falls similarly along to where normal VWAP is on that first green day, but then gives us a little gauge of, we can assume then, the volume profile also saying the similar thing of we had the biggest bar at that $8 to $8.10-ish range. So price action as we're coming into market hours, after it had this little pre-ejaculatory celebration here right after the close yesterday, really wasn't any huge volume in that, but it was just, maybe was that a little bit defeating, or maybe was that just a little bit of getting everybody on their toes already for any action that happened on this third day, potential surge day today. But just everything that was the thesis for me today on this one was, hey, let's use this line. It doesn't have to be a hard set line at this 773, whatever I had it as, but it actually ended up being exactly where we opened, I believe, as well. Yeah, on this 5-minute chart, I have it here. Yeah, so it was kind of worked out perfectly, coincided with where we opened the market day as well for that specific line. That the very first trade I took in this one with this 50 shares was just a very speculative, okay, I don't think the probability of the trade is happening right here, right now, immediately after my entry, but I think that it is a point of I don't want to be trying to chase it as it starts to move, because it just could experience far greater slippage and quicker movement with the speed that it has shown it can produce if one side is caught off more quickly than the other side. So in essence, I was just establishing myself, betting on, hey, I think shorts are going to get squozen in this one, and I'm going to establish my position that way. And if it doesn't look like it's going to respect that, if it's going the opposite way, then I'll just go ahead and cut it. So in all of these, biggest loss was only 3% one on that first one. That did end up producing a little dunk, establishing a little long position as we had initial little tiny volume perk off of that area, off of that little line that I considered it an average line, and didn't use it as a specific hard technical line of 773. That is our average of the average trader, but as just a range of, hey, we're trading around here. Oh, hey, wow, we're getting a little volume push there. I think even Warrior Trading was a part of that one a little bit for the glimpse I caught him on the YouTube live stream today. But then we're getting a little pullback. We're back under VWAP now. Hey, I'll start sizing in and go ahead, get myself to 50 shares in the open. Hey, if we get to start to spike right out of the gate, then I will already be seated. I will already have a position in it, and I can continue to clear my head to potentially start adding more shares in if we start to get very quick price action and get closer to that $9 whole dollar level, and even further beyond for potential moves beyond there. But it just didn't happen. I respected that risk in the same regard of, gosh, where could this go wrong? If it goes wrong, when it goes wrong, do I think it's just going to hard slam below that line? Gosh, I don't see that happening, but I can certainly respect that and get myself out if it does happen at that point. But that's always easier said than done. So with that first minute candle, as price was certainly dumping around there, cut that first trade as that thesis was kind of broken of looking for that immediate first action above that little line of demarcation to start testing that high volume profile range that I saw on scans there, from that $8 to $8.10 area, for the need to get above there quickly. If it had done that, I certainly could have seen it start to reject off of there like it peaked. How many times I've done that before on third day surges, that I've bought into that break of that volume profile range thinking, okay, great, sweet, we're in blue sky territory now. It's just going to start absolutely ripping and going crazy because everybody's underwater. Whereas that's the point where it's just free floating, and now everybody again starts to get short in it, and it just slams back down. So if that had happened, I certainly would have recognized that, taken a few shares off into that push above that point, and then set the stop very close right underneath that to protect against, to make it not even just a break-even trade, but a profitable trade just above my average entry price there on that first one of like 786-ish range, if we did get the break above there for that specific trade. But didn't end up working, so cut that one. And then I called it a little bit of a dip and rib bounce, or just a little dip bottom that start pushing with big volume there, as you can see in this 936 candle. Saying, okay, well, this could be, now we're pushing above that little line and little range I considered to be that line of demarcation, that anchored VWAP line that, hey, we're kind of using it as a barometer today to see if it does have any merit. VWAP was also coinciding, the VWAP for today coinciding decently along there as well, and then just still under that big $8 whole dollar level, psychological price level, and the volume profile range as shown on the scans there. So buying into that, looking for the anticipatory continual scaling above there, not only with my position size, but of price to just continue to start filling in and whipping people off sides as we were still holding once again, sized in with another 50 shares for my second trade. Yeah, so kind of with a full 100 share size on that one, but gosh, price just was not willing to have it, so I ended up cutting pretty quickly after that and getting 774 fill, as that specific trade thesis wasn't happening in that minute either. Just let it go and forget about it. Knew I wasn't going to be done with it. Sure enough, it could have another attempt later, but I'll just forget it for this right now for this little mini candle. And what was this? 3, 4, 5 minutes later, tries the same thing again after putting in a higher low. Now we're getting big volume to come in. Was this the biggest volume candle on the day? Yeah. Biggest volume candle on the day coming to push this thing. And in one regard, as I'm getting my entry, I'm thinking, okay, great. We got big volume coming in to step this thing up to start skipping price to get to these levels. I'm going to go ahead and size in again with another 100 shares at that entry point. And then it got a little bit higher off of that, got to a new market hours high of day, but just started failing, started downpedaling once again. And I'm thinking, gosh, you got to be kidding me. With that much amount of volume, this thing was total trickery. The volume profile, that $8 to $8.10 range was just far too much overhead for this thing today. Not crazy amount of overhead or dilution that I saw potentially otherwise as fundamental dilution in that regard, but it just wasn't having it in that morning session. Completely died off from there, so cut that one for another 2% little loss. So then I tried to sit on my hands thinking, okay, maybe I should follow along that Bryce 2E 3 strikes and you're out. If I'm in and out on a ticker 3 times, maybe I should just clear my head. I knew I had a clear head. I wasn't emotional about it whatsoever. But for then, as we get into this, what would now be potentially third time even here at this 953 candle, as in to put in another higher low, tried to attempt with there with decentish volume and rejected there. I'm thinking, okay, I got to go short. If it goes against me, then it's absolutely going to do its fourth time's the charm. Screwed me over, screwed everybody over that tried it, 3 times before as well, and now having to jump their bias too short for how many times this thing has failed. So got in paper short there around 7.7-ish, a little below there. Covered a little bit kind of perfectly at 7.34, 7 around there as in this little amount of strength as it was dunking to new low. Still respect. I think that was only a quarter of the position that I had though. Still wanting to see this thing just continually die off for its failure to jump any higher. And then of course it does the specific exact thing that I knew was going to happen in the back of my mind on the short side of, man, I could totally see this thing just start ripping, exactly what I mentioned, of start to do exactly what I wanted to see on the long side. Or it could definitely just be the little fake out that again, it's the tap above VWAP again, or it gets a tap to a new high of day and then just becomes a fake out. And sure enough, I cover the rest of that little paper short position pert near the exact high of day on this one. Oh, it's just such a frustrating feeling to be buying at the exact top on these ones, covering them short. But that was this respect that I needed to have for it, for how dangerous this one would have been to just continue to bag hold it, to say, oh yeah, it's just going to be a fake out above that high of data. I certainly felt that was the reason for my conviction on trying to get in this thing 3 separate times, round trips with longs, of respecting the amount of dollar volume that was there today. Regular hours were showing just shy of $100 million volume on the day. Compared to the previous few days, they're obviously not anywhere near what it did on that first screen day, but of course that was with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 market hours of dying volume of no price action to support any dollar volume coming in. So of course, this is just another perfect example of, I'm glad it was a paper short to be able to make this mistake, and I'm not emotional about it whatsoever, of knowing that I was correct in my thesis of getting short this thing after its failure to do the things that I wanted to see out of it, but not being so revenge tradey about it. I was just following along with what I felt the chart was saying on the day there and respecting everything that it did say of as volume was coming in once again and breaking above not only key levels technically on the chart of high of day, previous little VWAP ranges, that key $8 psychological level, just respecting that and getting just raped in the ass for it. But that is trading 100% there. So That was SEV. CRXT I'll go into now. Missed this one. I'll take away anchored VWAP here. Missed this one. I had an order set. And reading the other guys' thoughts on it in the Millionaire chat, I know a lot of other guys were looking for like 275-ish area to be getting short this thing after the huge day it had yesterday. Looking for kind of, call it a first red day or just first pullback day, even for more downtrending price action. Roy, I think, was definitely looking for sub 2 to start looking for covers there after getting short initially around 265-ish. Or whatever the top here was during market hours. I had an order set. I literally set a limit order at 265-ish, thinking, okay, maybe we get it a little top or a little perky there, and maybe it goes a little beyond that, but I could see myself starting in with that type of size, and sure enough, it didn't even reach all the way there. I had a huge rejection candle at this 935 candle, and that was the start of the little downtrend for the morning session at least. And then interesting enough to see Roy still in this trade as he had his little position sizing in around the 2.4 area in this VWAP reclaim, continuing to hold on to his profit target of sub 2, maintaining the thesis that, you know, you gotta be convicted in what you were looking for initially, but also, again, willing to adapt to what the chart is saying at the same time, and to see him eventually around the 2 o'clock time frame just covering everything for how well it was holding up and not doing specifically what he wanted to see. And even he admitted to, hey, it's probably a stupid decision, but as price show later, I'm grateful that I did that so I wasn't fighting myself as the price is reclaiming back above VWAP and testing these other key levels. It didn't do anything crazy, but how many times have these things done crazy things before? Crazier things have certainly happened on these types of charts that can get you very offsides very quickly, especially on the short side. And that's something that I definitely have to factor into if I do start to take actual trades with these on the short side, is factoring in how much those guys are accounting for movement against them, because, you know, as everybody said, even their initial entries weren't full size. And I think Roy specifically said it was only like 2/5 of what he really wanted to be in this one for. And even that was like a $7,000 profit, as he's covering, you know, still like a 10% plus profit, but, you know, I have like $70,000 position on at least, you know, maybe 60, $70,000 position for what's considered 2/5 of his normal position size, or what he wanted to take on this type of trade, is still just, of course, baffling to me as of right now. But then understanding that another level to it of being able to start sizing into these trades and not just make it okay, from my entry point, price immediately needs to start doing exactly what I want to see out of it, but how they allow for movement against them and still end up profitable at the end on all of these. And so that just continues to baffle me, and I still definitely have to play around with that. And I think that is a personality trait that fits with some traders, and I don't know if I necessarily coincide along with that I do just love price to immediately start working from wherever I get my entry, but of expanding myself and my horizons and perspectives overall to understand, hey, I want to start in with a little position here just to protect against things happening like this, because I do believe the overall trend for a chart is not continual parabolic craziness, but overall death. Respecting it when the parabolicness, like yesterday, starts to happen on these types of charts, but also carrying that fact in mind that these companies are crap and they are terrible and they are meant to just completely die off. And if that backside can be caught safely, shorting is all about that timing, right? So being a part of that can certainly be a feasible and profitable opportunity. That was CRXT. Last one that I did take a little stabby on was MDVL. Man, just missed it. After pulling this one up, the daily, of course, looks just so beautiful. We're cutting out today. Just to see what we're looking at. Let's do, just for how it's holding. I forget this. I forget the specific float on this one. Another low floater, 10.6 million floater here that I'm showing on scans. Love the intra-daily aspect of it. It does suggest that it has these little perks and doesn't have a hard continuation after these moves. But I don't need continuation. I just need price to be at these levels after I'm already in it. So establishing a small little trade of 100 shares, I was running out of cash after stepping in on SEV a lot specifically. But notice this chart around here as we're under VWAP. We're holding pretty decently, and we're coming up on another relative low again right here at this 268 level that had a pretty fairly significant bid showing on 268 there. So it was holding pretty decently as Ask was stepping on it pretty ferociously. So it said, hey, it's holding pretty well. I think this could be another little bottom. If we get to reclaim to VWAP here, then it could set up for don't want to call it an ABCD pattern, but for just it little morning perk, holding a long VWAP in the afternoon and then getting a potential afternoon spike there. I could see something along those lines of that happening. But sure enough, after that entry there, that 268 line broke and we dunked off of there, and the slippage I got was a 2% loss on that one. So it just continued to sell off, but did not break low of day, and just somehow found a very quick redirection of price to reclaim it back to VWAP and start to, within half hour later, get to a new high of day, pulls back to VWAP after that, another new high of day after that, and just chop fest. But that was I knew going into this one with that longer term intraday time perspective that I wasn't going to be trading just that tick by tick price action, that it was going to be more drawn out, not so focused on I need to absolutely nail this top tick, or because price reaches this specific point that I don't want to be a part of it, or I'm setting my stops precisely at this level because it's not a precise in any way, shape, or form price action that way. But yeah, for what I set my parameters at, gosh, yeah, I just didn't, for the lack of conviction at that point in time, it was just like, okay, yeah, I could just continue to die off from here. I'm not going to try to force anything more out of this trade that is not showing itself right here, right now. But then sure enough, it comes back and does exactly what I thought it would do later in the day. And it was crazy cool to see, to watch it around this time frame for that 3-3 hold. 3-3 got absolutely battered over and over and over again, and then it held perfectly. Just had a huge bounce off of there, immediately like 3-4-ish range, 10-cent move. I started to slowly pull back, continue to press on it more, and then just within milliseconds, within the second, it was down to 310 range, and then just back under VWAP, lackluster volume after following that event. But that was cool to see just of how quick that can happen, and that's I did try to take it. I didn't have any money left to trade it with my cash account here for this little 3-3 move for how well that was holding, but that was something that I definitely had to factor in my mind too of, okay, yeah, that's great. You can make a trade based off of how well that level's holding for the risk reward of, I can get in right at 3-3 and I can risk 3-3. It's like a zero risk trade, right? Versus the reality of the situation for how many times this happens, that you have to factor in a huge amount of slippage of these things potentially just dunking off of you with everybody else thinking the exact same thing. That risk reward is not actually zero risk. It is a huge amount of risk to the downside. With needing to factor in that possibility of you not being able to get filled at 329 or 3-3 if you do want to get out of it. If it's not looking like it's going to happen from there. So great little reminder and lesson on that one for MDVL. And that was really all that I had on the day. Again, future strategies working out well. Session-wide strategy, I missed being a part of the full. I don't know how I end up doing that at times. I missed having that strategy button pushed on my NinjaTrader for the start of the session, but got like 5 contracts filled, a little bit higher than what price opened at for the session-wide strategy, so then tried to put the profit targets still at 10 points away from each one of those fills that I got, and they didn't all fill at that point, so then kind of just took like whatever 5 points they were at when I got back from what else I was doing last night around midnight Eastern time. But then sure enough, it keeps running and does perfectly what I expected it to do, but didn't want to deal with the OCO, blah, 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 whatever. And 930 strategy also worked out beautifully with those 2 ES contracts that I take for that strategy as well. So we'll see how session-wide strategy works out for tomorrow's session, for Friday's session, after this incredibly hard and just straight down to the right red candle day that we had today on SPY. 1.5% in the green perfectly we're showing here on SPY. So we'll see if we get 10 points above the open of the session for this Friday, and see if that Friday 9:30 open also wants to produce that 2 points above the open that we'd love to look for and has been consistently producing itself over and over again. So that is all I had. I sincerely thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.